Hello, my name's Richard. I am the owner of the Bookwell, a Christian bookshop based in East Belfast. One of the things that we try to do in our shop is to support local artists and authors. We have a section of books by spiritual writers from all over Ireland, both past and present. Some of these writers are self-published, so their names may be unfamiliar to you, but we try to be a platform for them to bring their books more into the public's attention. For this interview, we are joined by Bronagh Lawson, who has written a book called Belfast, City of Light, which was released towards the end of 2019. This video also coincides with Irish Book Week, which is a yearly festival to celebrate all books by Irish writers, so it just seemed like a good time to put this video out. We begin with Bronagh just reading an extract from her book, Belfast, City of Light.
Chapter 1, In the Beginning. Would anybody like to go to church? Asked my friend Martha. We were in Dublin and had just woken up after a fancy dress party for a friend's 40th. Many of the revellers staying overnight had surfaced for breakfast and were nursing hangovers. Yeah, I'll go, was my response. I thought the walk would do me good before driving back to Belfast. It was a Catholic church, quick service, rhythmic mumbling prayers, automatic responses. The congregation knew the drill and enjoyed the haste. The surprise for me was that a feeling I had had previously being amplified 100-fold within the church during the service. Great flows of something, energy maybe would be the best way to describe it, trickled down my head. On exiting the church, I turned to Martha and told her what had happened. She said, "Maybe we're converting you." "No, I don't think so, but something's up," I replied. Religion and I didn't really get on. In my first year at grammar school, my school report showed my religion mark to be 19% and my class position to be 88 out of 90. The teacher's comment was uninterested, and quite honestly, that's how I stayed for the next 35 years. Before undertaking this journey, I would have described myself as spiritual but removed, by choice, from the mainstream religions in Northern Ireland. In my teenage years, I had built up a barrier between myself and religion as a result of what I saw on a daily basis during the Troubles. People being blown up, murdered, and all nature of horrific incidents, something to do with God, apparently. If it hadn't been for my paternal grandmother, Ganger, or Anna Lawson, who had a very strong faith, I don't think I even would have been christened or confirmed. Having been born in the 60s and brought up in rural Northern Ireland, the Troubles and endless Protestant versus Catholic violence and rivalry just switched me off to a true connection to any church. I blocked out what was going on to survive, tried to be a normal teenager, and planned my escape to England and art college. In later years, I was disgusted by what had happened in Northern Ireland in the name of religion, and as every church scandal broke out in the media, I revelled in its reporting because it seemed to confirm my, and no doubt others', thoughts that organised religion was best avoided, that it was more about abuse and subjugation than love. The height of my church attendance was carol services, weddings, christenings, funerals, or European Heritage Open Days, where I'd simply enjoy the quietness of the space. Nothing, I thought, would get me to engage any differently.
Bronagh, thank you. And thank you for agreeing to do this. This is the opening of the book that you'd written it came out last year?
Yes, late. December last year.
Belfast, City of Light. And it really chronicles your journey around the city of Belfast, visiting churches, but not necessarily the outside of the buildings. This is more experience in the church from the inside, from the Sunday service aspect of it.
Some people say, "Oh, there's no photographs in it," and yes, I like the architecture of churches. I kind of go, no, that isn't what this is. It is very much going to the church and experiencing a service. It doesn't count if you just go and look inside. It's a totally different thing to have the people there and to experience the service.
Yeah, and you admit yourself that you weren't a churchgoer. So what led you to embark on this?
Insanity.
Okay.
No, I talk about that in the beginning, in that I was reticent in order to do this, but it really was that event that I'd had, that I went to a service because somebody randomly asked me, and I experienced this feeling in the church, and it was something that I'd felt, I'd started to feel over a couple of years, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I was in the church and I felt it, and I thought, oh dear, okay, right, I'm not too sure about this, but that's quite interesting. And was it that church, or is it any other church, or what is it that I'm feeling, or so it really was. I kind of, I'm an artist, so I kind of conned myself into believing that I was kind of doing an art project, and kind of like I was just going to see.
Yeah. And when you were doing the early planning of what you were going to do and the visits you were going to make, I think that somebody mentioned that it was almost like spirit led in what you were doing, and you described that sort of feeling as energy. You mentioned it in the opening chapter. Did you know what that was, or can you describe what it is now after doing the journey?
Did I know that I didn't like to think what it might be. I didn't like to think what it might be. I kind of started to go in a few. I live in East Belfast, and I started to go to a few churches in and around where I live, and then I kind of thought, oh, I'm not really doing this. And I've got a list of all the churches at the end of the book, and you see at the beginning, I didn't go all the time. I kind of went and then I didn't, because I would go, oh no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. This is insane. I'm not doing this. And then I would wake up one Sunday and I think, I'm going to go and do this, and I'll just go here. So yeah, the planning bit thing was that there's no planning in that I was conscious of just how many churches there were. I thought there were a lot, but actually there's more than what I thought. I kept finding things all the time. So there was a point where I thought, oh no, if I wrote a list and I said I'm going to do all this, I won't do it, because it's just insanity. So I had to just kind of go with it.
Yeah. To see where it ended up.
Yeah, I just had to go with it.
It's like all journeys, really. When you start something, you want to see where it goes. You're being brought up in a troubled city, and the idea of God and what religion was being fought for. What was your impression of God, or what was your relationship with God
before
you started?
I don't know whether I had one, or I don't think avoidance.
Okay.
Probably. I didn't grow up in Belfast. I grew up in Portaferry and Strangford, so I had a rural experience of the Troubles. But actually, I was talking to somebody about it just recently, and saying about it's the weight. Have you noticed the weight of what we kind of grew up with?
Yeah.
And that weight isn't there anymore. Or just simply going in somewhere and thinking, this particular place or this area used to be so heavy, or with everything that was going on, and that weight has kind of shifted from the city, or shifted from Northern Ireland, and how you didn't, when you're in it, you don't realise that when we grew up in it, you didn't kind of think how abnormal it was.
Yeah.
So it's, I was born 1966, so my whole growing up was, that's what it was. But it was like a background noise,
Okay.
a constant whining background noise.
Yeah. How does that journey change now that you've completed it? Maybe you haven't completed, but we'll come to that later. But your aspect of who or what God was at the start compared to this chronicles, it's 10 years that this book journey. So
Yeah.
what has changed? Your sort of perspective changed after a decade?
Ooh, I think everything's changed. Everything changes in a way. I think that there's a point that I talk about in the book whereby I kind of think it's like, oh, maybe there's something else going on here with religion and with God in the city, opposed to what people think. A lot of people might think from the outside or even inside about what that case is, and I thought, oh, that's really amazing, actually. So, I mean, I mapped out all this. I'd done kind of artwork and stuff from this, and I mapped out all the places, in the city that have congregations and churches, and there's churches in offices, there's churches in museums, there's churches, there's in people's houses, and there's churches in churches. There's maybe 2 or 3 churches in one church, and there are a lot of people in the city, and when you actually map it all out, and you think that there are these clusters of people all over the city who are practicing their religion, and we're not often conscious of that. Or maybe you're conscious of a certain denomination, or you're conscious of a certain area of a city, but actually looking at the whole city and taking off the Protestant Catholic thing, but just going, oh, all these people who are practicing and what is actually on, it's amazing. And that's when I kind of went, oh no, it's like we're a city of light, and it's all over the place. I'm kind of getting tingling feeling talking about this, but it's like, and we focus so much in Northern Ireland on all the negative of everything, on all the negative, and even in the media, that the negative aspects of everything, and it's always the awful and the negative and stuff, and so we can have a perception that we just like moan. We can have a perception that that's just what the whole thing is, but actually, maybe there's something else going on there. Except nobody was mad enough to take on to actually kind of go, oh, actually, what's going on here? And oh, you do this way, and oh, that's interesting. So instead of seeing it as, I kind of see it as there's like what is that? I call it it's like a treasure box, but there's another name in the book that I was saying. It's it's like all these different strands, mostly of Christianity is what I kind of look at in there. Although I do have the Buddhism stuff around as well, but there's all these different strands kept all around the city. So it's kind of like having a living museum of all of these strands of the way that people worship in one place. And that is really amazing. And for some reason, this is where it is on that. And somebody said to me, oh, I think you would have had the same experience if you had done this in England or somewhere else. And I'm like, and I just kind of looked at them and smiled. Because no, I don't think that is the case. I don't think that is the case.
Yeah, because it must have come as a surprise to you then to find so many, as you'd mentioned, there's so many churches just popping up all over the place, and and obviously you've mentioned that it wasn't just the Christian church that you visited and experienced as well. So tell us about your experience of you mentioned about Buddhism as well.
There's quite a few different strands of Buddhism within the city, which I found very interesting. I hadn't been aware of that, and to me, I think Buddhism is similar to Christianity. Is like there's all these offshoots. There can be all these offshoots, and so there's just different ways that they're doing the same thing, and so there's some very dedicated sanghas and within the city and wider within Northern Ireland, and I think they're very calm. They're very calm presence, to have within the city. And who really support, really support a very calm presence. But I think as well with that, every time I think, oh, I've seen everything, then I would go in somewhere and go, oh wow, you do it this way. And that's the same with the Buddhists as well.
Okay.
But on that, I think some of the practices that some of the other churches have, some of the Christian churches have, are very similar to some of the Buddhist churches, or some of the sanghas, or something particularly around silence, and it's really meditating that they're doing. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether, like, some of the gospel halls, and they'll have a lot of silence, and then they'll go on to different, or they'll read something, and then you think about it, and you have silence, and then you go, and which is a very Buddhist thing, to meditate and to have silence. So I think that's really interesting. That's interesting as well.
Sort of that early monastic style of how to do things, which I know has grown a lot. There's a lot more understanding of that in worship, and especially now with the way the world is, and that busyness as well. It's almost as that time that you actually need to stop and think and be silent, which is actually in many ways what you were wanting to do on this journey. This was very much as the artistic side of things that you were saying about, the sensory, the hearing of it and the seeing of it. How did that materialize for you as the artist? Did you see it as going to church as a worship, or was it more?
No, I kind of conned myself at the beginning to think I'm not really going to church. I'm just doing an art project. So it allowed me to kind of go in my mind. It allowed me to go, and then I could think as well. I was interested. I talk about in the book. I have a list of things of what I would write it up after I'd had the experience, and I'd have a list of things that I would look at. And at the beginning, I kind of thought, well, how do you work this into an art thing, or and as time went on, it just became different. It just kind of became different, and there's a point whereby, I always had a camera with me. My camera didn't work, and I don't even remember where I was. I was in Knocknagooney in the Church of Ireland, and then I went, oh, this isn't an art project.
Okay.
It doesn't matter that I haven't got a photograph of the inside of this. That doesn't actually matter. I did continue on to take photographs, but artists get a lot away with a lot. You see, we can excuse ourselves in all sorts of different ways. Just go, oh, I've got a wee notion to do this. I'm going to do it.
When you went out to do this, the book that came out of it, maybe way down the line, it may not have been your first aspect of this at all, but you would have been journaling, maybe doing diary notes. How far along was it that you thought actually more people would appreciate this?
It was probably about 5. I kind of knew before, and I thought there's no way I'm going to do it. When I talked to people, often when I go into church, people will talk to you, although they don't talk to you in Catholic Church.
Okay.
They'll talk to you in most other ones, but I talk about that in the book as well. But people would ask you what you're doing, or welcome you there or whatever, and I would always say what it was, and they'd go, "Oh, you have to write a book. You have to write a book."
Okay.
And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. But people kind of kept saying it, and it got to the point where I knew. I mean, I spent 13 years doing cross-border development programs. Spent a lot on interfaces. Spent a lot of time and energy doing that. So I knew that there was always a point that you could get to with that. And there's a point whereby that I wouldn't have felt. I didn't feel I wasn't the right person to be delving right into the spirituality and the religious part of it, other than superficially, I think.
Okay.
But so I knew with that whole background of experience that what I'd seen and what I've experienced it could have other benefits or other uses for people, just to kind of think, well, oh, that's quite interesting. And I it's Northern Ireland, so it's what's your name and where you come from and where did you go to school and who's your daddy and who's your all of those things that you have to deal with, and I dealt with when I was doing all the cross community programs and everything. So people always put you in a box. It's like they're you're trying to figure out where's the box that I can put you in. So, but with this, you're not in a box. You're not, like some people say, oh, you mean, do you go to the Protestant churches too? Or do you include the Presbyterians? Or, or what's it like in a gospel hall? So, because you're including everybody in it, you're not in the box. You're just there's no box.
Yeah.
You're no box. And so it's the one thing that I have done that I can talk to anybody about, with any background or any whatever your ancestral story is within Northern Ireland or Ireland, and be able to stand my ground and just kind of share whatever it is that I've, or answer any questions that they might have. And I love being able to do that, as opposed to thinking, oh,
Yeah, absolutely. And the reader themselves, when they go through it, they'll say, "Oh, I know where this place
yes,
is." Yes,
people recognise different things.
Yeah, they'll be able to relate to it.
Or kind of go, "Oh, you went to our church," or "Oh, I used to do there," or recognise different aspects of that feeling in different things. And then hopefully other parts, it's like, "Oh wow, wouldn't have thought of that."
Yeah.
So there's a few.
And we'll not name drop a few churches, but we do know that there were some churches you visited more than once.
Yes.
In that respect, your reasons for doing that are, I'm sure you'll share why you did that. And was it different the second or third time round compared to the first? Were you more aware spiritually of things around you, or was it different in the way that maybe you didn't experience the first time around?
I think it can be different depending on who's there, depending on where you are in the year. Going to a Christmas service is very different. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Don't know what you think about that. Going to like a wet February somewhere, can be very different. So yeah, you can't. And what became quite interesting as it was going along is there's quite a few churches that have changed denomination. So you might have gone and it was like a Baptist church, and then now it's like something totally different.
Mm.
So it's quite interesting to go at a different, when it's actually been taken over by somebody else, and go back in again and see. And that's happened quite a bit in some of the inner east kind of. There's various ones, and so and I just caught the ones at the end of where they were at, and now there's like a whole load of new people going in. I think that's really interesting. So it's quite interesting to see that. And in the city centre, then there's ones that started up and that didn't have a building, but now they've got buildings. So I think you realise as well, it's like, oh, actually, historically where Belfast is at, I've been witnessing, a shift in the city, and like a generational shift in some aspects, and so I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, certainly it's sort of my generation. It's like you went to church because you had to.
Yeah.
Whereas now sort of the younger ones are going because actually they want to worship, or they want to have an encounter. And I think there is definitely some sort of generational shift in that.
Yes.
There's so many different ways where a lot of it is, as you say, you've got your silence element, you've got maybe full blown worship, you've got the organ, or you maybe just have a solo singer, or no music at all. So there's obviously different aspects that are feeding into the different congregation really that want to experience something different.
Yeah.
What way did you? Did you
my
have a favourite?
Preference?
Yeah.
That's what people like that.
That's my roundabout way of saying.
Favourite?
Don't name drop.
I don't know. Sometimes I think, do I have a favourite? I was surprisingly like gospel halls.
Okay. Yeah.
The people who are in gospel halls who have been there in that same gospel hall, keeping it all together and keeping going, twice every Sunday, whatever age that they happen to be, and they all know each other, and they're quite amazing. They're quite amazing. I'd never been in a gospel hall. I wouldn't have been in a gospel hall for a service. I don't think I'd ever been in a gospel hall. So they were quite a revelation for me.
Sure.
That's the right word.
Yes.
I think I really admire them, for just sticking at it and sticking with it. And I really feel, I was really feeling for people when COVID hit, and then, people, it's like, no, you can't do this. And I was thinking about all the things about how do people then, how do people when that's so much part of their weekly, sometimes daily existence, how do they then deal with that suddenly when it's like stop? I think that's really interesting. Maybe there's another book in that, but I think that was really interesting. And I did go to a Catholic service the week before everything closed down, and the priest said, and those of you who go to daily mass now, that won't be happening, but you can watch on the webcam, and somebody will be here every day doing mass. Don't worry, there will be somebody here. I kind of thought, I was looking around some of the people, and I kind of thought, I don't think that particular generation of people had not all of them would have been able to have the webcam, to be able to connect in and whatever. And I know people, it's on TV, and there's various different ways that everybody's getting around it. I think that's quite interesting. But I think that thing of how, I think that's not in the book, because obviously that's happened after, but I think that's really interesting. It's like how people have had to innovate around this. I really, you didn't ask me that, but I really feel for some of the ministers, you know, that suddenly all the competencies, extra competencies that they've had to kind of wrestle with.
Yeah.
I think it's really released a lot of creativity in some people, and then other people it's just like, oh no, please.
No.
You know,
It's an extra module that's going to have to be added into.
it's an extra thing, and you know, if you spend 5 hours editing your Sunday service, it's totally different than, you know, spending, you know, 5 hours working on your sermon and then just, you know, turning up and doing it. But
Yeah.
because I really felt for them, I felt for all the ministers and priests and everything as well. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, you've preempted where I was
Sorry.
going with this. No, it's
Sorry.
okay. You know, with the whole the COVID pandemic and the lockdown of churches, if this had happened in the middle of your book, would you have stopped or gone on at another time, or did you go down the whole sort of the online services as well?
I've gone
You've
down
been-
the online thing. I've been down the online route. I found that really interesting. But I don't know. I think if it had happened near the beginning, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have been far enough in it to kind of go, oh, I'm curious to see what's going on here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really know. Or yeah, if it had been in the first year, I mightn't have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mightn't have continued on at that point, but yeah, after a couple of years, yeah, you would decide once you got over the shock of the experience.
Indeed. Yeah, because it was a bit of, as you mentioned about the learning curve for the ministers, but it was also how everybody else experiences that as well from their living room and their jammies, you know, and in many ways, and I think this was the whole conversational point, that maybe people didn't always realize that the church, it wasn't about the building, it was about the people. And when you mention about the gospel and you feel that warmth of people, in many ways that's probably another reason why you keep going back, because you feel that warmth of humanity and that love that's there. It's sometimes it's hard not to get that then through the online service, but you still somehow feel connected with them.
Yeah, I think online is quite interesting. I think I do feel a connection with it. I think it was quite interesting how, I know there's quite a few priests and ministers and stuff on Facebook and various things anyway, but then how that kind of came into its own. I thought it was quite interesting to be sitting on a Thursday evening and, you know, suddenly somebody pops up, you know, with their night prayers to say, and you kind of go, oh, all right, well, I'll just I'll just listen in now, which I wouldn't have, you know, hadn't have done before. I thought that was quite interesting. Kind of, oh, look what's going on here. I think in many ways, then some of the churches were able to. It's almost like made what they were doing outside more visible.
Yeah.
More visible from the ones, you know, often, you know, I was round about who were in cars, out who are going in cars and have the service outside in the cars, open air, to the live streams and the, you know, the YouTube and the Facebook ones and so it kind of made everything really visible, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Rather than being kind of hidden away. But I was surprised when at the point where they said, right, you can go back to church now. I was surprised. I thought, oh right, they'll all open up again, but they didn't, and that kind of surprised me. I thought, well, but it made sense actually once you kind of saw the reasons why on that. Because initially I thought, oh well, everybody will just like open up and away they go, but you know they didn't do it. It's only really September now. A lot of places have, done that.
So that's sort of gradual
Yeah.
getting back into it, and I think genuinely some people just weren't ready. They just needed the time to be right, and so much preparation.
Totally. And then the size of some congregations.
Absolutely.
And then it's like, okay, now we're doing 4 services a day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's a level that people have to be able to cope with as well, as far as the staff goes. But even I think that's interesting. But I have been going online and various different things all around, mostly around Belfast. But then I have been and you go further afield, and I went. The first one I'll tell you is, it's not in the book. I should be talking about the book, but it's not in the book. But the first online one I did was the Quakers.
Right.
And I thought, they did it on Zoom. And I thought, this is really interesting. But if you had never been to a Quaker service before, you would have been totally flummoxed as to what was going on. And it was lovely. And if anybody has not been to, or is aware, the Quaker services are not, people, they don't have a minister, whatever, people sit around, somebody will say something, and then it's half an hour of silence. So it was really lovely to do this on Zoom with all these people, and there's a few people. This is one of the Belfast churches, and there was a few people from Canada who had clicked into it, and it was really lovely, and there was a really beautiful feeling from it. And then at the end of it, they just said thank you very much and said hello to each other, and then stopped. It was lovely, but you would have got a shock if you hadn't have had the experience before inside a Quaker church.
Sure, indeed. And I was going to ask you, was there somebody that you watched that you hadn't been to the church?
Oh yes, yes. No, there. So my thing is that I'm going to every church in Belfast for a service. Mm-hmm. I still have not completed that, as you said.
Yeah.
After, I'm 12 years now.
Okay.
In it, so, and every time I think, right, I've nearly done it, then somebody will tell me about somewhere else, or I'll find I've missed out some. So there are maybe between 20 and 30, I think, unless there's a new one that has started up in between time, but there very many possibly could still to do. So yes, I tried to look to see if they had webcams, or were they doing YouTube, or what it is that they were doing first. Mm-hmm. And I did as many of them that I hadn't have on my list, and then I kind of looked around to other ones that I knew to see who was doing what and where.
Okay. Do you think there will be a follow-up when you get round whatever churches are left? Do you think you'll...
I think, well, what I am doing at the moment is I did document it all as it was going around, and I'm editing an artistic photographic one, so it's not like, okay, this is about the architecture. It's more kind of arty than that.
Okay.
So that's my kind of winter project that I'm doing. So I'm going to do that, and hopefully beginning of next year I will have completed that mammoth thing. It's quite something to complete. Something, it's all right starting something like this, but completing it is another story.
Yeah. Bronagh, thank you very much for your time to speak to us about this. And I know you did say yourself that you'd hope the book would spark 1,000 conversations. So
yeah, I think it depends. It's people just kind of, something clicks and think, well, that's quite interesting. I could give that to somebody to have a look at. It just seems it's attract different people in different ways. People who have faith and people who have no faith. There are people who are interested in the artistic part of it. Or, yeah, it's just curiosity. It's all about widening out our perspectives, I think.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for writing it.
Thank
you
you
for doing the
Thank
journey.
you for inviting me.
No problem at all.
Okay.
Thank you. Bronagh's book, Belfast City of Light, is available through our website, which is thebookwell.co.uk/Belfast City of Light. Copies are $14.99 and we're offering free delivery all over Ireland and the UK for a limited time only. We also have a small supply of signed copies which Bronagh has made available to us, which will be on a first come, first served basis. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. We hope that you enjoyed our video and we'll hopefully see you again very soon.